Hello and welcome to the final part 6 of the Botanicals, Butterflies and Bugs folio. And today we are focusing on the final piece, the front cover. So I've taken another bit of offcut of that file folder and I'm just sort of putting it in place and cutting to size, fiddling around with how I want that to look. That feels a little bit big, so I just want to take a little bit more off. I want a bit more space around what is going to be a little window pocket on the front cover here. So I'm just now measuring up so I can cut this little pocket out, window. So you can see here I've just I've drawn on the back and now I've gone round with my craft knife just to cut that little pocket out. Oh, I keep calling it a pocket, window. And of course we're coming back now with the distress inks just to help this all settle in and match the rest of the project. So I've used tea dye, then vintage photo. I'm just using that little bit of card there that my finger's on so I don't get fingerprints all over that, that nice ink. And then a last little bit of ground espresso just to edge. So you can see how that's going to sit on the front cover there. So I'm just going in with some water to activate that lovely oxide, let it do its magic, dabbing that off. And just playing around with that until I'm happy. And I want to add in a little bit of that Salvaged Patina. I've used it in a very, very light touch in places across the project. So again, just smooshing that Salvaged Patina onto a little bit of packaging, bit of water, and using my paintbrush. I'm using a very small paintbrush so I get very fine spatters. And look at me, I've been fussy cutting. I didn't think you'd want to watch me fussy cutting. I've taken a whole load of things from both the butterfly and the wildflower version of this book, and I have cut out loads and loads of little bits to create this collage here. And I've chosen a background page. So this is still from the same book that we started with. I've chosen a black and white background page so that that colour pops even more. So I am wanting to put a little bit of stamping on before I stick because there's going to be little gaps peeking through that frame. So I've used the text stamp that I've used all the way through. That's a Paper Artsy mini stamp. And I think I can't remember if I used tea dye or vintage photo there, just to add a little bit of that stamping on in the background so that there's some texture and interest on that bit of frame that might peek through all of this lovely collage. That looks like tea dye actually that I'm using, doesn't it? And now just starting to glue these bits of collage on. You'll see I when I cut all those pieces out, I was playing around with them on the page first, getting them in the place that I wanted them to be and getting that rough idea. I always take a photograph when I get that rough idea because I know then I need to move everything off so that I can start to stick it down. So that taking a photograph just gives me a little bit of a reference point so that I know roughly where I want to put things back. Of course, it never goes in exactly the same place as it did the first time, but it's just knowing roughly where I want things so I can fiddle around with them. And honestly, you've got a few minutes of that. Here on the video, I've edited out so much of the time it took me to do that, not just the fussy cutting, but the fiddling around with where it looks right. And I just go with what kind of feels balanced. Just play with it until if it feels right, that's right. If it feels out of balance, maybe try moving something or adding something in or taking something away, and just give yourself that time to play with it. Because honestly, this whole section here probably would have taken me easily over an hour of just the placing and sticking, not to mention all the choosing and fussy cutting, but I find that really therapeutic. So I'm really happy with how that has turned out. And this is why I chose that black and white picture to go in the background, so that it really kind of pops. So again, I spent ages finding that right perfect spot for it to go in. Of course, there is no perfect spot, but again, just kind of figuring out which bit I want peeking through that frame and then cutting that page to size. Before it's time to glue it down. So I'm just using high-tack glue, but I've just put it in a little tiny bottle so it's easier to dispense. And now just starting to think about the bit of the cover that's going to be peeking out behind that pocket. So bringing in some more of those, I think it's a mix of Tracie Fox labels, and also there's some bits of Tim Holtz ephemera there from the Field Notes pack. And now I know the size of that pocket, I can go in and distress ink the bit of pocket, a bit of front cover that's going to be peeking out. So I've done exactly the same as I've done everywhere else. Tea dye, vintage photo, used a bit of water there just to get it oxidized. Now using some ground espresso just to really highlight the edges. And going back in with the tea dye to then blend all of that together. And I've got out my Field Notes stamp set again, and I'm wanting to start to bring together all the elements of the front cover and the back cover and all the spines. So I'm choosing some of the kind of narrower text stamps at the moment just to create some interest on these kind of really the narrow spines here that will show when the folder is closed like that. So I want as much detail on those as I have put everywhere else. And thinking about the bits that are going to peeking out behind the that pocket that's going on the front there. So I'm just using that bit of blue paper there just to mask off that bit there, because I didn't want the stamp going over onto the inside. So I'm just doing the same on the back cover as well before I stick that down. And you don't have to do stamping on this bit. You could just trim a really small piece of paper and stick that down there as well. But I quite like the idea of some of the stamping, some of the words that come in that Field Note set. So I'm really happy with how that's all starting to look now, how that's all coming together. So time to glue this little pocket down to the front page. And I am going to make it a pocket so I can put a tag in it as well. So I'm just putting a bead of glue around the two long sides and the bottom so that the top remains open and we can pop a little tag in through that gap at the top. And now that's in place, it's time to stick down the back cover as well. And the same with the little pocket there, the little coin envelope. I'm only gluing the sides and the bottom so that we can use that as a pocket if we want to. And now the spine. So I stamped this, this was like a label stamp, and then I added in, I think, one of the Tim Holtz kind of number stamps into the middle of this, and I just stamped it on a bit of that leftover card again. I think I might have used some tea dye paper that I stuck on that card and then stamped that on there. And what I'm doing is just using my pokey tool, poking holes in each of the corners so that I can put some brads through. Now these brads are just decorative. They're not going to be purposeful, they're not going to hold it in place, but I wanted that sense of this being something that had been attached to the spine in that way. So a bit more texture, a bit more detail, and just trimming off the overhanging bits of those legs from the brads, giving them a good smush down because I want to obviously stick this to the spine, so I want that to be as flat as possible. And I also want to cover up those brad legs because I don't want my ribbon getting caught on them as it moves through. So I'm just going to adhere this to the spine just by popping some glue along those two narrow edges, the top and the bottom, so that the ribbon can move smoothly between it. So you'll see what I mean. So if I put that there, the ribbon is going to go through and be held in place by that label, which is why I stuck it on some cards so that it's got a little bit more oomph to it. And I really want to make sure that that is stuck down, so plenty of time to leave that to dry. And I'm just going to thread my ribbon through, which is a little bit flimsy, so I'm putting it around a piece of card so that I can thread it through just to make that easier. But once it's through, it's through. And that will hold the ribbon nicely in place. And just tying that in a bow so that I know the length I want to cut that off. And here we go. The finished piece. But before I finalise it, I want to stuff all of those little pockets with as much ephemera as I possibly can. So I've got a whole mix here of, again, these are from the Tim Holtz ephemera pack for field notes, along with bits and bobs that obviously I've kind of made along the way, just making sure all those little kind of pockets are filled with bits of treasure. Tucking some things behind that belly band there, and as well just where I feel it needs to, just aging it, adding that extra little touch, even if it's just around the edges there with the Distress Oxide. That's vintage photo. Again, just pulling everything together. Love that idea. Somebody made a comment and said this looks like something that a botanist has been taking out and making his notes in for years, and that's exactly the result that I wanted. So we've got lots of little places to write notes. We've got all these bits of details here of the different bugs and things that we find along the way. Extra little journal spaces. Little waterfall cards here. I have absolutely loved making this, and thank you, because it was somebody made a comment and asked me if I would do a video making a folio journal like this, and I thought, wow, that's going to be a lot of filming and editing, and it has been. I think it's taken more time to film and edit it than it has to actually make it, but It has been a fantastic journey, and I love that so many of you have been making this along with the videos, which is fantastic. So thank you to everybody who has joined this little journey of making this folio. Thank you for all your amazing comments, to all the new subscribers. It has just been fantastic. But I am looking forward to taking a little bit of a break from the editing suite. So over the next few weeks, the videos might be a little smaller. Now this folio is not going to go in my shop. This folio is a little bit special. I've decided I'm going to auction this for charity instead of put it in the shop. So do keep an eye out. If you're in the UK and you would like to put in a bid for this journal, I will put a video out in the next week or so telling you how you can do that. So thank you again, and I look forward to seeing you soon.